Hey everyone, welcome to MuleyHaven, part of the Bridge the Gap DFS website. I wanted to do a quick video on a late swap scenario from that happened last night, and wanted to go through my process and how I do late swaps when you're playing a single cash lineup. Late swapping is incredibly important for DraftKings cash games. The ownership has been really sharp this season, and your biggest edge on some nights is going to be your ability to adjust to news after lock, and a lot of your opponents you'll find may not be following as closely, or they may not be making the optimal swaps. So that's a really important thing. And I always say, if you're going out on the town, either don't play or play on FanDuel, you always want to have access to a computer, and you want to make sure that the projections you're using update after lock. Uh, if you're aggregating projections, make sure all the projections that you aggregate update after lock. It's incredibly important. You don't want to have a projection system in there that you're using to average that isn't adjusting to news and to starting lineups and to scratches and all that stuff. Um, Last year was, I think, the first year that DK brought back late swap for NBA, and it was astounding that I would notice like good players, like players that worked for websites and stuff that weren't even utilizing late swap in NBA cash, and it's just so important. Some nights when you make those adjustments, you could smash on a night you normally may not have. So I just wanted to go through yesterday's NBA slate. It was Friday, November 8th. I was faced with a decision in cash games where we had Shabazz Napier, who was questionable for the Timberwolves. He was 4.2K, I believe, on DraftKings. Yes, and he was point guard and shooting guard eligible. So we didn't get the news on him until 7:22 Eastern, and I had to basically have two lineups ready to go. One for if he was playing and starting, because I was probably only going to play him if he was announced starting, and then one for if he wasn't playing. And I had a really tough decision because I had to figure out what I was going to do with the 7 o'clock games, because I knew I wasn't going to get the news until after lock. So that was where it was a really important decision to figure out exactly who I was going to be playing from the 7 p.m. Games. One guy I really wanted, he is kind of a vomit play, as Blender would say or whatever, but is Fournier. Horny for Fournier, as I say. uh, he was 4.4 or 4.6. Just to let you know, I put daily roto projections. I don't think he's coming up because I have that game X'd out. So I just upload. I'm in Rewind right now, and I uploaded daily roto projections from yesterday. And Fournier daily roto, I checked on this. They had him for 29 minutes. You can see Fantasy Cruncher has him for 30. I was more in the 30 camp. This projection I'm using right now is only for 29. So what I'm going to do, just roughly estimate, I'm going to bump him up to 27 because I was more on the 30-minute train of thought. What Fantasy Cruncher has is 30, and that was from other stuff that I was seeing was more in the 30s. He ended up only playing, I think, 27 because the game blew out. But I'm just going to put it, so I bumped him up to 27 points, like less than a half a point. What I'll do right now is I'm going to run the optimals with him locked. He was a must. Another must I had was Neto and Jared Allen. I don't think I need to lock them because I think they'll probably come up regardless. But they were like my three locks. And Fournier was the guy I wanted to play, the only guy I wanted to play that started at 7. So right now, I have basic settings, one unique, no randomness. Obviously, this is just for finding the optimal build. Um, right now, you can see that the optimal build has Brogdon. Brogdon was a tough call for me because I wanted to free up a little more flexibility. It's an 11 game slate, and there's a lot of news that could break. And I wanted, a spot to be able to get Napier. And using Brogdon or a Beal, I think Beal locked at 7 as well, would have locked up a guard spot. And you can see that Brogdon's coming up in 65% of optimal builds using these specific daily roto projections. I didn't use daily roto last night. I used a mixture, an aggregate of a few others, which did factor in some daily roto. But I want to make sure I have a path to get to Napier. So personally, I decided to go to sacrifice maybe a point or two of projections to not use Brogdon just because I wanted a little more flexibility. And you can see there are optimal builds that don't have him, where you can go heavy on, Lillard, McCollum, some of these Timberwolves values. So what I would do prior to lineup lock is I want to look at some lineups that have Napier. So what I'm going to do is find him in here, lock him. So right now I have both of those guys locked, which is Fournier and Napier. So you're kind of seeing now that the Napier optimal builds don't have Brogdon, which is another reason I didn't really want to lock him in there. There were other, basically saying if Napier were to become in play, then Brogdon paired with him isn't going to be optimal. And I'm not saying, this isn't how I don't just go by what's the optimal projections where I use my cash game. There may be a guy I don't want to have that I'll exclude. This is just to give you an idea, and I do play around a lot on the app on my phone. But just getting that idea, you want to know where you're going to go. You don't want to be caught by surprise, even when you're just playing one cash lineup. You want to know exactly what you're going to do if then scenarios. And you want to be prepared because you don't want to have to do that at the last minute or be in a panic. So before 7 o'clock even hits, I want to know what I'm going to do with Napier. What are my pivots off him? I know like Okaji was like 4.1. He's not really coming up in many optimals, but he certainly would be a pivot. But you would want to make sure that I think he might have been small forward eligible. So you want to look at not only what players you're locking in, but what positions you're locking in. Because I wanted to have obviously I'm going to want Towns. He was pretty much a lock too. I know Allen was a lock. I'd be fine. Nito was a lock. I'd be fine with playing like Davis, Whiteside, Lillard, McCollum. I also like Bogdan from the Kings. He's not coming up in this particular optimal, but I was on him last night and actually did end up playing him. So he was I think he was like 4.5. So he goes in range with that Napier pivot if Napier weren't to play. So you just want to have all these scenarios ready to roll. So now let's say, and this is a cool thing in Fantasy Cruncher, I don't play NBA MME. So I only have FC Lite for NBA, so I can only make a max 20 lineups. But let's say we get the Napier news after 7, which we did. We got the news at 7:22. I want to be able to quickly stay on the slate and filter everything out that's already happened. So I go quickly to game filter. I'm going to get rid of the 7 o'clock games. X them all out. I know I have Fournier locked in, so I'm going to quickly team filter the Magic. And I apologize, I'm not a Fantasy Cruncher whiz. I'm not a tech wizard. I'm very very ignorant when it comes to technology, but I'll do my best. So if you see any shortcuts or something I should be taking, feel free to leave it in the comments. Not Vukovic, sorry, Fournier. So I have him locked, but I want to get all the Magic players here. And Orlando. Okay, so now I have all the Magic players. I think I might have already unselected them. But yeah, you would just unselect them like I have it. Now I have Fournier locked. So Fournier's locked. All these other guys are excluded. Now I can run my build. Let's say this was after lock. I'm crunching. I'm getting all my optimals with Fournier locked. And I also want to make sure I have Napier locked. So I don't think I locked him. So I want to take off my team filter. So I get all the players. Sorry, my computer's a little slow. And now I'm going to get Napier, make sure he's locked. Let's say if he were to be announced starting. So now you can see I have all these Napier, Fournier lineups that shouldn't have any 7 p.m. guys. So that's a good way to go about it really quickly. I'll look at a lot of projections. I will just play around just hand building on my phone too. But when you're in a pinch and say you got a couple minutes to react to news, you want to be really quick. Fantasy Cruncher is great for this because it's fast. It's not going to lag at like 5 minutes before lock like some places. You want to just really get used to all the settings and be able to do this really quick. You want to work on being able to upload your stuff really quickly if that's how you're playing. You want to be able to know how to exclude players and how to lock players, and that this is just for one lineup. So every night, like I said, as far as late swap goes, you want to have the if-then scenarios all ready to go. You want to be able to adjust your optimizer after the slate, and most importantly, like I said, you want to make sure your projections are updating after lock. So if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or shoot me a message on Twitter. This is just sort of a basic setup, basic tutorial on how to do this. I apologize if this seems really elementary to some people. Our site is designed for a lot of new players as well, and the more experience you get with late swap, the better you're going to be. So just always be ready for news. Don't play if you're going to go out drinking. Don't just be smart with your play, and make sure to utilize late swap because it's one of the biggest edges we have. And if you don't want to deal with late swap, play FanDuel. Thanks.